It was 108 degrees outside, and I was lying flat on my living room floor with a bag of frozen peas stuck to my forehead when the buzzing started. Not the sound of a fan, because my AC was mysteriously dead, but an actual power tool. A drill. Outside. On the side of my house, where my central air unit was supposed to be humming. At first, I thought the heat had finally cracked me. Maybe I was hallucinating sounds like desert travelers hallucinate mirages. But then came the thud. The unmistakable, horrible metallic clunk of something big and expensive being dragged across concrete. I scrambled up, sweating bullets, and flung open my front door. That's when I saw her. Karen. In wedge sandals, floral capris, and the posture of a woman who thought God himself had appointed her to the HOA board, hunched beside a dolly cart with my entire air conditioning unit strapped to it like it was an unwanted recycling bin. She looked up, blinked once, then pointed a perfectly manicured nail at me and said, "You're welcome." At first, my brain couldn't compute the situation. I just stood there, mouth open, blinking like a broken Roomba. Karen, of course, took my silence as an invitation. "Your unit was violating community standards," she said, patting the metal shell like it was a naughty dog. "It's too loud, it doesn't match the color of your siding, and it's visible from the street. I had a contractor remove it this morning. No need to thank me." I finally found my voice, though it was hoarse from sweating through my shirt. "You ripped out my working air conditioner in the middle of a heat wave?" She sniffed. "Working is a stretch. I heard it making that awful humming sound. Probably inefficient. Besides, this is a homeowner's community, not an industrial zone. It brings down property values." Now, you might think I screamed or threatened legal action. I didn't. I'm a long-game kind of guy. The kind who once let a neighbor accidentally mow 3 feet into my lawn for a full summer before fencing off a chessboard-patterned patio extension. So instead, I tilted my head and smiled like a man about to add another folder to a well-organized collection of HOA horror stories. "No problem," I said. "Can you text me the name of the contractor who took it?" She looked momentarily suspicious, but then brightened, thinking she'd won. "Oh, it was Ted. He's my nephew. He does all my handiwork. Family discount. But don't worry, we'll leave the area clean." Then she trundled off down the sidewalk with my $4,800 unit clanking behind her like a prize kill. I didn't follow. I just went back inside, opened my utility drawer, and retrieved the thick black folder labeled warranty, A the C. Here's the thing about me. I don't buy anything without reading the fine print. Not cars, not electronics, not even socks. I once returned a microwave because the warranty didn't cover extreme humidity, and I didn't trust my kitchen's fan. So when I bought that A the C unit last summer, I paid a little extra for the Platinum Protection Plan. That included a clause, my favorite clause, about unauthorized third-party removal. I flipped straight to it, smiled, then opened my laptop. The first email went to my HVAC supplier, requesting a technician to come verify the unit's removal and generate a service report. The second went to the Platinum Warranty Department, attaching the HOA's regulations, my warranty, and the freshly signed removal affidavit that Karen had smugly posted on the HOA Facebook group earlier that day with the caption, "Sometimes you have to take action yourself." The third email went to Ted. Not to confront him, but to schedule him. For a quote. On a brand new, upgraded AV-C unit, one size larger than the last. He responded within 5 minutes. "Sure bro, I'll swing by tomorrow." When he arrived, I made sure to answer the door with a pitcher of lemonade in hand and a smile that could power a lie detector. Ted was younger than I expected, mid-20s, tanned, clearly not licensed for HVAC work, and definitely unaware that his aunt had just put him on a legal collision course with a 5-figure warranty clause. As he stepped around back to inspect the space where the unit used to sit, I made light conversation. "Karen says you do all her work?" He chuckled. "Yeah, I don't even charge her anymore. She's family, you know?" I nodded. Does she usually ask you to remove things from other people's homes? He blinked. What? I didn't push. I let him finish his inspection, take a few pictures, and scribble out a quote on a carbon paper form. Then I asked him one last thing. Can you put your contractor number on that? Just for records. He hesitated. I don't really have one. I just use my uncle's old paperwork when I need to. I grinned. Perfect. That night, Karen emailed the entire HOA board, CCing me, with a smug recap of her beautification initiative. She even attached a before and after photo of my house with the unit gone. Now that's curb appeal, she wrote. I replied with exactly one sentence. Theft of a functioning, privately installed utility system is punishable under Section 18 of the Community Charter and voids warranty protections for all unauthorized parties involved. 5 minutes later, she sent me a private message. What do you mean by voids protections? I waited. Then I sent her the PDF. She didn't respond. But the next day, the HOA group chat exploded. Apparently, Karen had fainted, literally fainted, on the sidewalk outside her house after opening a letter from the warranty company. Her niece posted a photo of her lying on a deck chair, surrounded by ice packs, clutching a thick envelope with the words, "Notice of Claim Liability," printed across the front. Word spread fast. Ted had been slapped with a cease and desist and a demand for damages. Karen was now responsible for the full value of the unit, plus labor, plus an emergency replacement. And that was before I even filed a civil claim. Of course, I did file it. But I didn't just stop at her. I filed it against the HOA board for allowing her unauthorized action under their name. Turns out, the board hadn't approved anything. Karen had lied. Boldly. Publicly. And that, my friends, is when the story went nuclear. The first board member to break ranks was Gloria, the treasurer. Gloria was a retired librarian with a perm like a woolly cloud and a love for rules that bordered on religious. She showed up on my porch that evening with a printed copy of the HOA bylaws clutched like a Bible. I want to go on record, she said, glancing around as if Karen might be hiding in the azaleas, that I did not authorize any removal of your property. That woman is out of control. I invited her in, poured her some iced tea, and let her flip through the warranty claim documents I'd neatly assembled on my dining table. Her face turned pale when she saw the part outlining board liability for rogue actions taken in their name. She used our letterhead, she whispered. She printed the HOA seal on that Facebook post. I nodded slowly. Yes, and that's called impersonation of governance authority. But don't worry, Gloria. I'm sure the insurance lawyers will be very understanding. You just might want to find your own counsel. By the following week, the entire board was melting down. Jack, the president, sent a formal notice to the neighborhood distancing the board from Karen's actions. Wendy, the secretary, resigned outright and posted a long goodbye essay on Nextdoor filled with not-so-subtle jabs like, "I never believed an air conditioner could bring down a whole community." But the real masterpiece came when Karen decided to host an emergency town hall in her backyard. She invited the entire block. Her email subject line read, "Neighborhood Crisis Control Meeting, refreshments provided." Naturally, I went. I showed up early, sat in the front row of her folding chairs, and brought a clipboard to complete the look. Karen wore a bright lemon-yellow dress that made her look like a very angry daffodil. She stood beside a plastic table of Costco cupcakes and launched into a 15-minute monologue about property standards, noise pollution, and unified visual themes. She did not once mention the lawsuit. Then came the real twist. She pulled out a poster board, yes, a literal poster board, and unveiled a hand-drawn plan for the new Community Improvement Initiative. It featured crudely sketched landscaping diagrams, a list of banned lawn ornaments, and, dead center, a line item that read, "Mandatory Aesthetic Appliance Conformity." I raised my hand. Is that a legal phrase? She ignored me and moved on. We must all sacrifice a little to create a harmonious living space, she declared. I, for one, have already begun by removing a visual blight from our neighborhood. The crowd stirred. An older couple looked over at me, eyebrows raised. Karen smiled tightly. And I have full authority, as granted by my status as compliance officer. A murmur went through the group. You're not the compliance officer, someone muttered from the back. That's not a real position, someone else added. Didn't you get that embroidered on a hoodie you made yourself? Karen's smile faltered. I stood up. Would you like to clarify, Karen? For the group? Who exactly appointed you compliance officer? She clenched her fist. It was a unanimous board decision in a closed session last fall. Gloria, seated beside me, cleared her throat. No such session occurred. And we don't do closed votes. That's illegal per Article 7. Karen spun on her like a malfunctioning Roomba. Gloria, don't you dare. That's when I handed Karen a white envelope. This is your formal notice of subpoena, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Your deposition is scheduled for next Tuesday regarding the civil case. The crowd went silent. Karen opened the envelope with trembling fingers and turned as white as the frosting on her Costco cupcake. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Then, almost predictably, she collapsed onto a patio lounger. Again. This time, no one ran to help. By the time the deposition day rolled around, I'd already had the new AC installed. Twice as powerful, whisper quiet, and smart home connected. Ted had ghosted everyone and taken down his Facebook business page. Karen, however, did show up at the attorney's office, dragging behind her a lawyer who looked like he'd been paid in expired Bed Bath & Beyond coupons. He glanced at the documents once, blanched, and immediately asked for a recess. But it was too late. The warranty company was already in full swing, pursuing damages. And my own claim, naming both Karen and the HOA for gross negligence, was officially on file with the small claims court. That's when things got messy. Turns out, this wasn't Karen's first rodeo. The deposition revealed a string of similar beautification actions she'd taken over the years. A neighbor's fountain she deemed excessively Italian had mysteriously disappeared. A flagpole someone installed, without consultation, had been removed by a landscaping crew she called without permission. The clincher? She'd even filed complaints about fragrance pollution from someone's gardenia bushes. With every revelation, the HOA's liability deepened, and so did Karen's humiliation. What truly set the neighborhood ablaze, though, was the investigative audit I requested. See, while everyone was busy watching Karen implode, I quietly submitted a Freedom of Information request to access HOA financial record. As a homeowner, I had that right. And what I found was delicious. Dozens of petty reimbursements signed off by Karen herself, landscaping oversight, community engagement supplies, signage repair. Nearly all of them paid out in checks written to Cash or her nephew Ted. I sent the findings to Jack, who promptly called an emergency HOA election. Karen, naturally, protested. "This is a witch hunt," she cried at the first campaign forum. "They're targeting me because I care too much." She actually said that. Out loud. On a live stream. The vote wasn't even close. Karen was removed from the board in a 39-2 landslide. The only 2 votes for her were her own and an elderly neighbor with cataracts who later said he thought he was voting for better pool chairs. The next day, I received a hand-delivered letter. "You are hereby banned from attending gatherings at 142 Summerhill Lane." I laughed, taped it to my fridge, and then attended a celebratory block party held at the neighbor's yard directly adjacent to Karen's. Someone brought a karaoke machine. Gloria made sangria. And as I stood there sipping mine, I could hear the soft whir of my new AC humming beautifully behind me like a lullaby made of petty revenge and cold air. But I wasn't done. Because while Karen had been dethroned from the HOA, she still owned her house, and her driveway extended exactly 1.3 feet into the shared easement. That detail was about to matter very, very much. I don't believe in revenge for its own sake. But I do believe in leverage. And Karen, for all her shrieking about property values and aesthetic cohesion, had overlooked one crucial detail when she plotted her neighborhood reign of terror. Shared boundaries work both ways. Her driveway, a wide, gray expanse of aggressively power-washed concrete, technically overlapped with the edge of the community easement, a 1.3-foot strip that was jointly owned by the adjacent properties. Namely, me and my neighbor Bill. Bill, bless him, was a Vietnam vet with a hearing aid that squealed when he smiled. He also hated Karen with the intensity of 1,000 suns. So when I brought him a six-pack and a copy of the plat map, he leaned back in his lawn chair, squinted at the documents and said, "Let's build a fence." Now, I'm not one for overkill, but if you've ever seen a boundary fence custom-built by a petty engineer with too much time and an HLA grudge, you know that there's a certain poetry in precision. We didn't just build a fence. We built a 6-foot-tall, city-permitted, laser-measured monument to mutual property rights. Black metal, decorative tips, a subtle golden plaque on the easement side that read, "Perimeter begins here." It sliced across Karen's driveway like a guillotine on a budget. Suddenly, her car, a bloated, pearl-white SUV with custom vanity plates that read HRH Karen, no longer fit. She couldn't back out. She couldn't pull in. The back tires would hit the curb and the front bumper kissed the fence with millimeter accuracy. The morning after it was installed, I sat on my porch sipping coffee and waited. I didn't have to wait long. At 7:16 a.m., the screech came. A primal howl of disbelief that echoed off the garage doors. Then came the banging, open palm against metal, and the shouting. "Who put this here? This is vandalism. This is targeted harassment. I'll call the police." I stood and waved cheerfully. "Good morning, Karen." Love the vocal warm-up. She stormed across her lawn like a hurricane in Croc. "You need to take that down right now," she hissed. "This is obstruction. I'll sue." I walked her to the edge of the easement and pointed to the golden plaque. "Actually, this is city-approved. Fully within our rights. You see, this part of your driveway? It's not actually yours. Never was. You've been encroaching for years. But don't worry, I didn't charge you rent for the decade." Her face turned beet red. "You're doing this to punish me." I smiled. "No, Karen. I'm doing this to remind you that actions have consequences. But if you'd like to file a complaint, here's the permit number." I handed her a laminated copy of the city's approval. She slapped it out of my hand. Then she stormed back to her house, parked diagonally across her front lawn, and slammed the door so hard her decorative wreath fell off. But Karen wasn't the sort to lick her wounds in private. No, she regrouped. She strategized. And 4 days later, she unveiled her counterattack, a community petition. It was laughably titled, "Stop the Fence Tyranny," and demanded the removal of obstructive and spiteful boundary constructions that damage the communal spirit. She stood outside the grocery store handing out flyers. She harassed people at the park. She even tried to bribe Gloria with homemade banana bread, which was confiscated on site because everyone knew Karen used Splenda. Despite her efforts, the petition didn't gain traction. Not because people liked me particularly, but because everyone had a Karen story. She was the common enemy. And I had merely become the first person to beat her at her own game without yelling or breaking a sweat. It was around that time that I noticed something odd. My mail started going missing. First it was a utility bill, then a package. Then I stopped receiving HOA newsletters. I contacted the post office, who confirmed my mail had been temporarily suspended at my request. Except I never made that request. A quick visit to the branch revealed someone had submitted a change of service form using my name. The handwriting was suspiciously loopy. I filed a report. When the surveillance camera footage came back, there she was, Karen, wearing oversized sunglasses and a hoodie, slipping the form through the lobby drop box. When confronted, she claimed she was dropping it off for a friend. So I made a new call. this time to a lawyer friend named Zoe. Zoe wasn't just any attorney. She was a corporate litigator who lived for high-conflict, low-stakes warfare. I brought her the footage, the fake mail request, the original AVC theft claim, and the petition. She laughed so hard she choked on her protein bar. Then she took the case pro bono because, and I quote, "I want to break this woman like a piñata filled with unpaid parking tickets." With Zoe's help, we filed for a restraining order and a formal harassment complaint. That meant Karen had to appear in court. Real court, not the HOA kangaroo version she liked to pretend existed. She showed up in a lavender pantsuit and pearls, flanked by a new lawyer who looked like he belonged in a daytime soap. Her opening argument was that I was emotionally tormenting her with symbolic constructions designed to shame and isolate. Zoe leaned over to me and whispered, "That's not even a legal sentence." The judge didn't even let the full hearing proceed. Once the fake postal request was confirmed and the surveillance footage admitted, the judge signed the restraining order with a curt nod. Karen was banned from coming within 50 feet of my property line. Now here's where it gets delicious. Karen's house is 47 feet wide. That meant she could enter her front door, but she couldn't cross her own backyard. Not without breaking the order. Her grill? Out of bounds. Her bird bath? Contraband. Her beloved rose trellis arch? Forbidden fruit. And if you think I'm exaggerating, think again. I caught her once, measuring with a ruler in one hand, a walkie-talkie in the other, calling out 10 feet, 12 feet like she was escaping Alcatraz. Then, 3 days after the court order, the final twist arrived in my inbox. A notice from the city. Apparently, Karen had illegally installed a gas line to build an outdoor patio kitchen, without permits, inspections, or licensed labor. And guess whose anonymous tip had prompted the investigation? I never said a word. I didn't have to. Because justice has a funny way of snowballing. The city not only fined her, they required the entire patio kitchen to be demolished and the gas line capped by a licensed utility provider, at her expense. Oh, and that decorative trellis? Turns out, it also violated the maximum height ordinance. It had to come down. Karen watched from her driveway as the city workers rolled in with tape measures and demolition tools. She didn't scream this time. She didn't faint. She just stood there, arms crossed, swaying slightly like a tree that had finally realized it couldn't control the wind. But even that wasn't the end. Because while Karen's legal troubles were piling up, something else had started quietly unraveling, something bigger than fences or appliances or court orders. Something she couldn't control. Her mortgage. And that's when I started making calls. I've always believed that when someone hands you a shovel and insists on digging their own grave, the polite thing to do is offer them a headlamp and step out of the way. Karen, in her rabid quest to control everyone else's property, had long neglected the slow collapse of her own. I don't mean metaphorically, her mortgage was bleeding. The signs were subtle at first. Her yard, once obsessively manicured, started sprouting weeds. The twice-a-week maid service stopped showing up. Her porch light flickered out and stayed dead. And one morning, I noticed a red envelope taped to her front door. Bank letterhead. Big block letters. Urgent notification of default. That's when I started connecting dots. I already knew from the city records that her illegal gas line had triggered a lien on the property. That lien meant the city had to be paid before a refinance could go through. Combine that with court fees, fines, contractor costs, and whatever legal snake oil her rotating cast of bargain bin lawyers were charging, and Karen's finances had become the bureaucratic version of quicksand. She was drowning in it, and still screaming about everyone else's lawn gnomes. So I called an old friend. Let's call him Clay. Clay works in real estate. Not the kind you see on billboards or Instagram with fake smiles and empty open houses, but the type who knows exactly when a property is 3 weeks from auction and the owner has no clue. He does clean flips, cold acquisitions, and occasionally helps people like me make very pointed offers. I sent him Karen's address and the name of her lien holding bank. Within a day, he called me back. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "She's 5 months behind. The lender's about to dump it to a private auction. Can we buy it?" He laughed. "If we move fast, we can buy the paper." In plain English, we wouldn't be buying her house, we'd be buying the debt. And with the lien stacking against her and the value underwater, we could get the note for pennies on the dollar. Once we owned the note, we'd legally control the lien. And if she defaulted again, just once more, we'd be in a position to foreclose or negotiate whatever terms we wanted. I didn't even hesitate. I wired the funds the next day. 2 weeks later, Karen's mortgage wasn't held by a faceless bank anymore. It was held by Clay's firm. And I, thanks to a little LLC paperwork and a healthy amount of petty vindication, was now the sole managing partner of the entity that owned Karen's debt. You should have seen her face when she found out. It started with a formal notice. I sent it by certified mail and had it delivered with signature confirmation. Inside was a letter, written in calm, professional language, explaining the reassignment of her lien and the new contact information for any future correspondence. Her jaw was probably still hanging open when she called the number listed at the bottom, Clay's office, only for the receptionist to politely inform her that the managing partner prefers communication in writing. She tried to play tough. She posted online about predatory lending sharks and vulture investors without naming names. She claimed the whole thing was a scam, and somehow tied to a stolen AFC unit. Her rant got 5 likes, all from bots. Then came the final notice. Her grace period expired. The lien matured. Her payment didn't clear. And that's when I made my move. Now, here's the thing. I could have foreclosed. Legally, I was within my rights. But that would have been too fast, too clean, too merciful. I wanted Karen to understand the full weight of what she'd done, not just to me, but to every neighbor she ever fined for a mailbox being 2 inches too tall. So instead, I offered her a choice. I mailed a formal offer to purchase the house, outright, at market value minus encumbrances, repair deductions, and penalties. The sum? Just enough to clear her debts, leave her with $73.82, and a stern reminder never to cross someone who reads warranty terms for fun. She had 72 hours to respond. She showed up on my lawn the next morning. Uninvited. Unhinged. Unwashed. "You're a psychopath," she shouted. "This is abuse. This is coercion. I will not be bullied out of my home." I set down my coffee, walked to the edge of the fence line, and looked her dead in the eye. "Karen, I'm offering you a clean exit. Or you can wait for foreclosure, move out with a sheriff's deputy, and watch your rose trellis get ripped out by bank contractors." She blinked hard. Her voice cracked. I have rights." I nodded. "Yes, you do. And you've spent the past 3 years ignoring everyone else's. So here's your chance. Take the deal, walk away with some dignity, or stay and let the system chew you into dust. Either way, I'm not lifting a finger." She left without another word. That night, she posted a final message on the HOA board. "Due to personal circumstances, I will be relocating. I have enjoyed serving this community and hope you all continue to uphold the values we worked so hard to maintain." It got 2 comments. One was a smiley face. The other just said, LMAO. 3 weeks later, a moving truck arrived. Karen didn't wave goodbye. She didn't even make eye contact. She climbed into her SUV, now streaked with bird poop and shame, and drove off without a single backward glance. I waited until the tail lights disappeared down the block before I turned to Bill, who stood beside me grinning like a lottery winner. "Think we should do something special with the house?" I asked. He scratched his chin. "Turn it into a dog park?" "Tempting," I said. "But I was thinking community garden. Something peaceful." In the end, we did both. We demolished the illegal patio, landscaped the yard, and opened up the space to the neighborhood. What used to be Karen's domain of fines, threats, and passive-aggressive flower arrangements became a place where kids played, neighbors planted vegetables, and nobody got sued for painting their front door the wrong shade of red. I even added a new plaque beside the old golden one on the fence. It read, simply, "Respect is renewable." And the best part? I still have the warranty folder. I keep it in a glass case in my living room like a trophy, because that $280 Platinum Protection Plan didn't just save me $4,000, it saved the whole neighborhood. But just when I thought the saga had ended, one final envelope arrived. And inside was something that changed everything. It arrived in a plain manila envelope with no return address, slipped between my utility bill and a coupon flyer. The paper inside was thick, official. Letterhead from the county recorder's office. I unfolded it, expecting maybe an outdated tax reassessment or some bureaucratic leftover from Karen's demolition permit. But as I read the bold title across the top, my stomach dropped and then immediately flipped into a laugh. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even bad news. It was a request for approval. Because, apparently, I now had a pending application to subdivide Karen's former lot. Filed under the name of an LLC. My LLC. The one Clay helped me set up to acquire her debt. In all the legal gymnastics, I had completely forgotten. Owning the lien and finalizing the property title had unlocked a quiet little perk in the zoning bylaws. If a lot over a certain square footage, Karen's old home barely qualified, was owned by a corporate entity, it could be petitioned for subdivision for purposes of community development. Which meant I could legally split the land into 2 parcels and build something else next door. A guest home, a workshop, or, as my neighbor Bill now called it, the Karen Museum of Bad Decisions. The idea was too perfect not to pursue. With Gloria's help, who had since become the new HOA president and was actively trying to erase Karen's legacy one meeting at a time, we submitted a detailed proposal to create a dual-purpose space, 1 part community greenhouse, 1 part public meeting area. No permits needed for soft construction. No zoning violations in sight. And, most satisfying of all, it would all stand as a daily reminder of what happens when you weaponize petty power against the wrong neighbor. But fate wasn't quite finished with Karen. About 2 months after her departure, I received a certified letter forwarded from Clay's firm. It was from her lawyer. A different one. This guy's letterhead featured a gavel, a bald eagle, and 3 typos in the header alone. He claimed Karen had been emotionally traumatized by the events and was seeking restitution for psychological distress caused by a hostile property takeover. The letter was 6 pages long, mostly written in all caps. It ended with a threat to sue me for undue stress, defamation, and public character assassination via lawn installations. I scanned the whole thing, emailed it to Zoe, and asked if it even warranted a reply. She called me laughing so hard I thought she'd dropped her phone. "She's trying to sue you," she said, "for building a fence on your own land and enforcing a lien she defaulted on. This is like trying to sue gravity for tripping on a staircase." We ignored it. The lawsuit never materialized. What did materialize, however, was Karen's inevitable rebound attempt. Word trickled back to the neighborhood through a cousin of a friend that she'd moved 2 towns over, into a newer HOA development. According to next-door screenshots someone forwarded me, she had already begun reporting people for inconsistent flower pot placement and vibrational disturbances from wind chimes. Within weeks, her name was trending again, but this time, not because she was in charge. She'd been slapped with a warning by the new HOA's legal team for serial complaints without evidence. Apparently, her reputation had followed her. The digital age has a long memory. So do neighbors. Back on our street, peace had settled in like warm sun after a long storm. The fence stood firm, the garden bloomed, and nobody gave a flying duck what color your garage door was, as long as your dog didn't bark past midnight. The former Karen stronghold had transformed into a community space that actually served people, not someone's ego. Kids hosted lemonade stands under the trellis she once tried to weaponize as a status symbol. Retirees planted tomatoes in raised beds where she once demanded silence and symmetry. One Saturday morning, I stepped out with my coffee and saw a kid no older than 10 hammering a hand-painted sign into the ground. "What's that?" I asked. He smiled. "It's for our neighborhood history project. We're doing landmarks." I walked over to read the sign. In shaky, colorful letters it said, "Karen's Last Stand, former site of HOA Chaos, 2023 to 2025. Now a place for peace and plant." I didn't correct him. I just patted him on the shoulder and handed him a Sharpie to fix the year. A few weeks later, Gloria asked if I'd speak at the next HOA meeting. Not as a board member, God forbid I ever volunteer for that mess, but as a guest to remind everyone what real community looks like. I agreed, under one condition. I got to pick the location. We held the meeting on Karen's old lot. Chairs in a circle. Flower boxes surrounding us. Someone brought a Bluetooth speaker and played soft jazz. No podiums, no yelling, no printed flyers threatening fines for uncut grass. Just neighbors. Talking. Listening. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up slowly, took in the scene, and kept it short. "I'm not here to gloat," I said. "Okay, maybe just a little. But mostly, I'm here because we learned something important from all this. Community isn't about rules. It's about respect." Karen thought she could control everything by force. But control isn't the same as trust. And power without respect eventually collapses under its own weight. Like her gas line. Or her driveway. Or her entire personality. Laughter rippled through the chairs. "But you know what?" I added, raising my coffee in salute. "I still owe her. Because if she hadn't ripped out my air conditioner, none of this would exist. The garden. The peace. This moment. So in a strange way, thanks, Karen." Applause followed, light but sincere. Someone passed me a cookie. Gloria wiped a tear. Bill muttered something about planting jalapenos in her honor. And just like that, the war was over. Karen's name faded from the lips of our neighbors. Her reign of petty tyranny was nothing more than a cautionary tale whispered to new residents and chuckled over during yard sales. Her house, now a community lot, stood not as a symbol of spite, but of transformation. We'd taken her madness and turned it into mulch. And me? I finally got to enjoy my porch again. With my upgraded AVC purring behind me. A warranty folder proudly displayed on the shelf. And the comforting knowledge that, sometimes, the best revenge is air-conditioned.